We're at a very noisy, and it's become increasingly noisy as the show has progressed this evening, at SA Taxi in Midrand, where about 230 vehicles come every month to get tarted up before being put back on the road. Maroba Maduma is the spokesperson for SA Taxi, a division of Transaction Capital that borrows money in capital markets and then lends on to taxi drivers. At best, you'll get prime plus about 6% if you want to own a taxi. But only 4 out of 10 applications are approved at SA Taxi, so they're pretty hard taskmasters. Also, they oblige you, if you borrow money from them, to buy a taxi. You've then got to put their telematics devices in your vehicles. But what it is doing is it is leading to changes in behavior. And that change in behavior leads to fewer accidents. It leads to happier passengers and a healthier industry. So why can we then not apply that more broadly across the industry? Can we not say to the new Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, Minister, here's a model that works, simply apply it across an entire industry? It will certainly clean up the industry more quickly than many other attempts have done over recent years.
So, the conversations are continuously ongoing with the
South Africa is the place of conversations and no action.
And inquiries. But, look, we can't obviously instruct.
No, you can't instruct.
What we can do is we can always offer information and offer shares. We do share the information. We do advise as often as possible. And the industry themselves do have the conversations in terms of trying to figure out what's the best way to make the industry safer for the commuters. At the end of the day, they also do care what happens to the commuters. And it's not in their best interest for that vehicle to be off the road.
No, it's not. But maybe it's the economics of the taxi industry. Maybe, by trying to regulate and police too vigorously in industry, you take away the incentive to operate at all. Is there a risk of that?
So, the economics of the industry are at the moment, the guys are hard-pressed. You've got the ever-increasing and decreasing and then increasing more petrol price. You've got inflation that is also quite high. You've got the normal average running cost of the vehicle. So, obviously, that makes it very difficult for the guys to run their business. And yet they still have kept the cost of commuting in a taxi very reasonable. Over the last 3 years, they've only increased the thing on average by 8% per annum.
Now, 8% per annum is nearly twice the inflation rate, official inflation rate of 4.5%. But I talk to my insurer and I say, you depreciate the value of my vehicle every year, yet you ramp up the cost of my insurance. Their excuse is because spare parts imported predominantly are the greatest cost to them when it comes to replacement. Whether or not I claim on my insurance policy, which I haven't done for years, but that's another battle altogether, whether I do that or not, this is their complaint. So what is the real inflation cost then for the taxi industry? If they're pushing up costs by 8%, you say their margins are being squeezed, what sort of inflation rates are they having to deal with?
So, the cost of the vehicle is quite high in itself, which means that the cost
They're paying, nearly R500,000 for a Quantum, for
nearly
example.
R500,000, exactly. So the cost of the vehicle is quite high. They obviously have to service the insurance, they have to service the premiums for the insurance, as well as the servicing of the finance for that vehicle. There's the cost of petrol, fuel. The guys fill up trillions of litres worth of fuel every day. Every year, not every day. That'd be a lovely.
It would be lovely
for the oil companies.
It would be great for the oil companies. It would be great for the fiscus because fuel taxes are huge. Yes.
So they've got those, and they've also obviously then have salaries that they pay to their drivers. They've got the running cost of the vehicle. So you mentioned the price of parts, for instance. We've got SA Taxi Rewards where we started importing aftermarket parts so that we can actually use them to drive the cost of repair in our insurance business lower, so that we can actually, again, like you said, keep our insurance premiums as low as we possibly can for the industry, thus alleviating some of that pressure to the industry. What we've also done now is we open up SA Taxi Rewards, where whatever vehicles we don't fix from our insurance perspective, we will then strip those vehicles and offer quality used parts to the taxi industry at a very affordable rate, which means that the guys then also again have less pressure on them. So we try on our side to lessen the pressure as much as possible through the vertical integration within the industry. So the deeper we delve, the more we're able to help the guys manage their businesses and run at a lower cost, the more they're able to keep the price. It's 8% on very low fares in the first place. But if they can run their businesses at a very decent rate in terms of money that they make, then that means that you have less of those vigorous young guys needing to be a lot more vigorous on the road.
Is there a way of making this industry work better without regulating it to death, because government likes nothing more than regulation. Is there any way of incentivizing a change of behavior rather than having to police it? Because we know policing doesn't work. We've been trying it for decades. It's simply the odds are against any law enforcement officials to do that particular job. Do we change the culture of the industry?
If you have a look, Bruce, I mean, you've got the Gautrain being funded for 6.5 billion rand, I think it was, subsidy,
losing money.
and still losing money.
Yep.
You've got the bus and the buses and the bus rapid system. I mean, combined between the buses and the bus rapid, they transport about 1.2 million people compared to the 15 million the taxis do.
We've got Metro Rail, which buys tall trains that can't fit on the tracks. I mean, we've got a shambolic public transport system. Are you suggesting that we take that money and put it into the private sector to make the private sector work more efficiently?
I'm saying there should be some form of conversation that is happening that is actually going from conversation to actuality, where there's some form of relief, some sort of subsidy that can be put in place to help the taxi industry better. So if we can do that, guys, I mean, we've got the taxi recapitalization program, and it's not to say the government aren't trying. They are trying, and that's why I'm saying there are conversations.
It was Spoondebele. I think it was Spoondebele. 2011, I think he came up with the term coffins on wheels, and the idea was then to refurb the taxi industry. There were going to be Russian taxis coming in. I haven't seen many of those. It tends to be more Quantums, and Nissan have got a vehicle, and I think Mercedes-Benz have got a vehicle.
Yes.
But it's this getting safer vehicles, getting seatbelts in vehicles, and I mean, all of that makes progress.
So I mean, the Quantums do have seatbelts. I mean, the progress
Do people
is
use
there.
them?
Well, you know what? The last time I was in a taxi, they were. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You stick with it?
But the vehicles are getting a bit safer, and there are initiatives. There really are. The taxi recapitalization program has just gone back out, where they've increased what they're willing to give for scrapping of the vehicles, which allows the guys to then start scrapping. And if they can scrap, get a decent sum, then they can put a deposit for a newer vehicle, and that also helps out. And what we try and do then on our side is to try and actually keep prices for pre-owned vehicles for guys who can't afford a new vehicle as low as possible. So the guys will come in, they have a lower deposit requirement, they have subsidized insurance almost, not subsidized insurance, but they have the insurance is also a bit lower in terms of cost to them, which essentially works out to a lower payment that you have to make to us, and that means that you're running a better business, more successful business, again, safer for the road, for everybody on the road, if you don't have to rush to make that extra.
I'm going to get my producer to clip this and send it to Fikile Mbalula and say, we've got to incentivize a change of behavior, because a lot of you take umbrage at the taxi industry. But this taxi industry exists, and it exists for a reason, and that's because public transport has failed. Private sector stepped in. 15 million people find their way to and from work every single day through this industry. And it's an industry that operates on tight margins and at the very thin edge of a very, very tough market. So yeah, there's an insight into the taxi industry. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a lot this evening from, and increasingly there's the taxi hooting. I think I should put my finger up. Until next time on Taking Stock. Good night.